本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
What's good, Internet? It's month day, and you are listening to Waypoint episode check number. I'm your host, Rob Zachney, and I'm joined by Ricardo Contreras.
I thought you were just
Patrick
saying
Klepek.
Monday weird.
I think you should just keep going to Kato first because you catch them off guard. I'd say like 1 out of 3 podcasts.
Yeah,
It's true.
Constantly. I'm constantly
the
like
spontaneity. It's the magic.
Gotta speak into this microphone for 2 hours? Who could say?
And Renata Price.
For a little peek behind the curtain, this is what we in the industry call top of the minute energy. When Rob has us clap at the top of the minute and really brings some pizzazz into the
Sounds
podcast.
like a Dragon Ball thing. Like he needed to gather his energy so he could throw it back to us as he began the podcast.
Patrick, it's Monday, publishing on Tuesday, and I just have one question for
it's
you.
month day.
Is E3 back?
I don't know, but they have announced their the first details of the new show, which has been now it's sold in partnership with ReedPop. I forget exactly how the logistically that went down from a business perspective, but they're taking over running it. ReedPop, who is known for more or less, if you've been to a convention, you've probably been to a ReedPop convention.
Maybe you used to go to a convention. It was really cool. And ReedPop also thought it was really cool and bought
Yeah,
it.
I mean, look, they seem to do a pretty decent job
Yeah.
of like running shows that people want to go to, and they're going to try and reboot E3. And while we don't know exactly how all that's going to turn out, one thing that is interesting is they are going to return E3 next year as sort of a split show, in which there are business days and then like fan, consumer, however you want to, whatever parlance you want to use, which is similar to what Gamescom has done, at least in the past. I went to one Gamescom like 13 years ago. I believe this is still how they do it, where there are sort of days for press executives, like sort of like folks that work within the industry to attend the show. And then there are days where fans also mingle in there. And then the idea is, well, for people who want to get meetings done, doesn't it make more sense to do that on days that are exclusively sort of focused on that and then let the fans show up and do that part of the show? I think it is probably, I don't know if it saves the show. It's an interesting approach. Business days being successful requires that people show up to E3. And I don't mean fans. I think you can run a fan-centric video game show pretty easily, but enough that like Rob and I are going to sit down and look at our budget and go, is Waypoint going to go to something like this? I don't know where this ends up landing, but it at least makes it more attractive as well. Then you'd be able to get all that done at a show, in 2 days or whatever.
It looks like they've got a plan where, so yes, these biz days will be 3 days before the public part of the show, but it looks like there's one crossover day.
And they're also apparently
June
like half the
15th.
convention center is going to be, according to this Video Games Chronicle article, half of the LA Convention Center will be dedicated to this, which I believe is also what the Gamescom done. Like Gamescom has a section that is not even where fans would eventually go. It's like it's strictly sort of booths and meeting rooms that are exclusively for press partners to show up for and take meetings. And it sounds like, I mean, E3 as it declined just wasn't filling the space at the LA Convention Center. There would just be giant, even though they were adding bars everywhere, that wasn't enough. There were still just huge patches of essentially farmland that you could grow, you could start your own business on. And so I think part of what's happening here is like, what if we, like, I distinctly remember going to see a meeting to go see Psychonauts 2 at like Double Fines at one of the last E3s I attended. And just everything to the left was just empty convention floor, just absolutely nothing.
See, I think next time they should have just advertised those spots, and then like all the indie games can like fight over them. Just bring your own tables. rogue booths being set up in the middle.
Kato says, "Let them fight."
Yeah.
Hey, you can fit an octagon in there.
Yeah,
You could absolutely.
There was enough space for sure.
use the business days to be like, hey, who wants coverage? Who wants it more? Yeah, I mean, I think, well, clearly they had to do something, but I do think it's going to be, do we have any word on, like, who's bought in on this? Who's going, like, has anyone said,
know.
like, we're excited about this to, like, yeah, we're going to hold announcements for this newfangled E3? Because that's really the big thing, right? Like, a lot of the stakeholders have seemed quite comfortable with sort of the new world of, you have the platform holders showcases, but then you can also do your own thing, or there's other showcases that you can take part in. And it seems like a lot of people who would have been like linchpins of E3 seem quite comfortable with sort of this new normal that's cropped up post COVID. Plus, you know, you have the weird falling out with Keighley, who's got that date circle on the calendar. To be, well, like, you know, every December, spite Konami. Every June, spite E3.
Yeah. Well, in theory, if the ESA is not involved, there is potentially a world, like, I would not be, do you get enough money involved? Like, it would be beneficial to Keighley to have E3 near it, even if they were not the same event. You know what I mean? Like, the notion that it is better for him to have his own thing that can get bigger, while also drafting off, like, the amount of money that would be invested in promoting E3, getting people out, especially if you imagine Keighley doing some sort of thing that had a pseudo fan facing presence. There is a scenario where all boats are lifted from that, and especially if he can say, well, I contributed to the ESA essentially having to cry uncle and give the convention to somebody else. That's a victory if that's how you want to view it. But I don't know. Selfishly, I want an excuse to see people again, and so I would really like it if E3 could justify the books and like make it so that we could go out for probably not an entire week, but 3 days would be awesome. I would like, PAX doesn't make sense for that anymore, but E3 is like the one major event where I just don't see that many industry people anymore, and it sucks. And I would like E3 to be relevant so that I could go. Is what I'm begging E3 to not fuck this up.
One day I'll see someone other than my direct coworkers. Maybe one day.
But even then, that's rarely in person, right? And so I don't know. Well, I guess I'm weird. Like, you know, I'm still you know, E3. Please don't dox me again. But I'm also rooting for a reason to be like around colleagues again. So I find myself in an odd position, but it seems like they're checking the right boxes, whether that, but again, like you said, Rob, it's a matter of who shows up and with what, and can E3 essentially convince all the publishers to do enough around that week, even if they still want to do their big things separately. I think it's possible. The question would just be whether that is still something that ultimately, like from our perspective, makes more sense to still cover remotely than it does to do anything in person. I think there's a pretty decent chance that they put together a successful E3 that still doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to go to and cover in person. But I don't know. I would like to be wrong.
I can see us go, like, I think the first one is probably an easy, like,
right.
You can, like, we have
There's
to
a
see what the new
factor.
E3 is. Yeah, we have to see what it is. That's easier to sell. I think year 2 is kind of going to be the, okay, like, now who is willing to follow this through? Who wants to suit up for this again?
Come on, Taco Bell. Sponsor Waypoint going to E3. Like, let's go.
Oh, my God.
Think about all the Gordita crunches we can.
I eat it every day. I'll do whatever I need to do, Taco Bell. It's fine.
Wait, every day?
Well, there could be options. It could be breakfast food.
Kata's rubbing their hands.
No,
like
opposite side.
Oh, really? There's limits?
It's definitely I will have a ton of Taco Bell one day and then probably not eat it for like months after that.
I will grow thousands of invisible wasps in my house, but I won't eat Taco Bell more than one day in a row.
The invisible wasps are. Here's the thing I learned actually doing even more. Like reading about
to try
the
and
invisible
justify your
wasps.
position. Oh,
No,
I'm under assault on the internet.
A lot of people online were like, "This sounds great." That would added me at least.
A lot of people.
Invisible wasps.
and
I'm growing thousands of invisible wasp shirt is inviting questions about my.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Rob doesn't know. Kato is growing thousands of invisible wasps in their home to
Yep.
help with the moth infestation they have found themselves.
I need-
So
in.
they come on these little tabs.
I need clarity on the invisible.
They're so
thing.
small you can't see the wasps.
Yeah,
Kato-
you
Kato's
see these little
justification was-
grains.
Yeah.
These little grains on this little paper tab.
Yeah.
Those are all like tiny eggs. And out of the tiny eggs come little wasps that are too small to see with the naked eye normally. You gotta take a little loop in order to like view them. I when reading things to like answer some questions that people had online, I actually learned that they
people. People.
they're very bad at flying actually, so they mostly just kind of crawl around, which I think is better. It's less likely
what
that
a
you'll
great.
It's less likely that
that's so much better.
it's less likely that you'll breathe
Yeah,
one in on
so,
accident.
Everyone's favorite thing about bugs is when they move around and make
Also,
foot
let's
to
be clear,
skin
you may have
contact.
They're
found-
cute.
You may have found this, but your moral ethical justification earlier was you are constantly breathing in other things that we don't see.
absolutely.
What's the big deal with thousands of invisible wasps that I'm purposely breeding in my
100%.
closet? And not
It's-
telling people when they're invited over, like Ren, that they're huffing thousands of invisible
feel like-
wasps as we discovered the timelines.
Wait.
Thousands is a lot.
Yeah.
Ren, were you involuntarily hotboxed with invisible wasps?
I was wasp boxed. It's true. Without my knowledge, I was wasp boxed.
Do you feel like you would have withheld consent for that had you been properly informed?
I mean, I trust Kato an amount.
Yeah, no, that's the right response.
I think that I would have trusted to go into their home. I would have said, if Kato had said, Ren, my house is full of invisible wasps, I would have said to Kato, I
My
care for
house
you
is
deeply. You're a dear friend.
haunted.
I will come into your house one time, but if I have a single one, if a wasp encounter registers, I'm never crossing these premises.
This
ever
is the
again.
great thing. It would never register. They're too small for
So-
encounters to register.
I feel like if the eggs are in that little honeycomb type thing, though, that little artificial honeycomb thing,
Mhm.
I feel like whatever hatches is going to be visible. Like I'll see the little specks,
Yeah, I mean, if you're watching, but
like a little mite, like on a
yeah.
plant.
Yeah. You can definitely like notice
Yeah.
them moving around at first if you're
So-
like looking at them as they're hatching, but like
I feel like
you
this
like hang
was.
this somewhere and then you don't notice it
I
because
feel
it's
like
just
I
like in the
imagine
corner.
this. I feel like there's been like always been research in like using other creatures for pest control. Like obviously, like you have the example of like mousers, cats being used to like, chase mice off and kill them. But like that, even with things like, things like moths or cockroaches, there've been attempts to try to be like, how can we harness natural enemies and natural predators to get rid of these things without like chemical bombing our home. But I also feel like it would have caught on more by now if it really worked that well.
Here's my counterpoint, Rob. You know who is the most efficient ant killer in your fucking home? There are no traps. It is the little spiders that live in your home. They are ant killing machines.
Yeah.
Like my apartment did have an ant problem for a while there, and we set up traps all around the place. And I will say that the KD ratio on the traps versus the one spider in the corner of our bathroom, it was astounding. The spider was carrying the entire team. It was kind of incredible. And despite me being a huge arachnophobe, I have chosen to enter into a truce with the spiders.
They're just
where
gonna
I
stay in the
won't fuck
corner.
them up.
That's cool. Just stay up there. We're
This
good.
the wasps are even better. You would never see them. You can see a spider. You can't see these fucking wasps.
I would rather see the wasps and have know what's going on around
You
me.
know what? I'm excited by this. I like Kato.
Thank
This
you.
is cool.
Thank
I
you.
dig this.
Look, the Smith. If it's good enough for the historic British mansion that's got a moth problem and they're trying to save their tapestries. This is an
It's
article
always
from
good
the
when you're randomly
Smithsonian.
Googling news articles to just paste into the group chat.
this is
No,
this year.
I'm good. I'm normal.
I like if I had something like this to deal with the mice that are all over my building, I would be so thrilled.
It's called a cat.
if I
Get
could
a
just,
single
like,
cat.
It's called a cat.
Because cats don't need to kill the mice. That's the key
You know
that I
what?
learned
Here's
about
the
cat keeping.
yeah.
Mhm.
They don't need to
Yeah.
kill the mice because the mice smell the cat and they're like, we got to get the fuck out of here.
Literally,
Which
we
is why
were-
if my landlord presses me on me getting cats, I'm going to be like, motherfucker, we had a mouse infestation. I am doing you a favor. This
Yeah.
entire building is secured by my sacrifice by having these cute little babies.
There were a couple
Yeah,
mice.
the thing is,
Me.
I can't bother Mina with a cat.
That's fair.
Like,
We had a
this is
couple
her
mice
home.
when we like moved into this place, and then they kind of instantly disappeared because we brought a cat with us, and then that cat unfortunately died, and then the mice came back, and like the second we
Yeah.
got our newest Una,
So
they were gone again. It's just
I've also seen
immediate.
the cat thing be way overstated.
Yeah.
Like our old roommates had 2 cats, and the mice did not care at all because they're like, you're ineffective. We know you're ineffective. And
Oh,
so
no.
we're just going to ignore it. Like, yeah, you smell like a cat. Good for you. I'm gonna go where you can't, and there's
They
nothing you
got
can do about it. You can sit there in the middle of the kitchen all you want, looking at the last place you saw me. I'll be somewhere else, living my best mouse life.
I mean, Rob, you didn't tell us that you were dealing with Chad mice.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Well,
I'm
I was
pretty
gonna
sure we
say,
got.
isn't that
That's
the,
an important distinction. You're
isn't
dealing
that-
with Chad mice.
Isn't that the brain worms working? What is it called?
The toxoplasmosis.
Toxoplasmosis.
Yeah,
I
that'll
thought it
happen
worked on
sometimes when
humans.
the mice stop caring. But then your cat is supposed to catch them.
Yeah, no. See, I think, yeah, these mice. I've seen what appear to be like plasmosis is plasmostist
Plasmized.
mice. Yeah, and like that behavior is different and weird. These mice were genuinely like, you're a solved problem. And so I
We do not care about you.
I was quite disappointed.
Wow.
So I guess speaking of predators brought in to ferret out little intruders, Patrick, the GTA leaker.
Yeah.
What's happened there? What's going to happen to the GTA leaker?
Well, it's innocent until proven guilty and all that. But the London police announced they arrested a 17-year-old hacker last week. They haven't explicitly confirmed why, but there have been news reports that it is related to the Grand Theft Auto leak. There were Rockstar, I believe, mentioned, or there was something came out that the FBI was investigating. It seemed not long before somebody was brought in related to this, and so. We don't, I don't think that the kid has been formally charged yet. It's all sort of going through the early parts of the legal system, but early indications are maybe some of the excited writing we saw attached to some of the videos were maybe more in and why this wasn't a more coordinated campaign to expose worker abuses within Rockstar Games. When you say a 17-year-old hacker, albeit, well, it's hard to tell if they actually are talented because both the Uber and Rockstar things were Slack exploits as opposed to navigating, a server infrastructure. So could just be like a long form version of clever reverse engineering or social engineering that we see pretty commonly.
I mean, that's like 90% of hacking these days, honestly.
Yeah, that's true.
You get that
That's true.
information,
Just-
you're in.
For sure. But if we take this at face value that it's a 17-year-old trying to look cool, that was certainly within the realm of possibility when we were talking about that before. And there were some real red flags on the way the text was written that had strong young person trying to write vibes, and so it may be the case that is where we've ended up with this. But at the same time, it's also like that feels like that happened a month ago. And part of what we were saying in terms of what are the long-term ramifications of all of this, I don't, hard to say if, I'm not on the team, haven't talked to anyone that works on that team, but our news cycles are so fast that even as something that could be properly construed as the biggest video game leak in video game history, seems to have happened ages ago.
That was 3 ministries ago.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Jesus.
So I'm playing a few games. I wasn't here last week, so I'll check in on what I've been up to lately. So if you know me, you know I love me the crunchy, historically accurate, like military shooter.
It's true, he does.
And so I've been playing a little game called Isanzo. And
this is this game. Did you? Yes, this is the game that I passed along to you.
Yeah.
Rob. Yes, I got a press release and I was like, wow, this got sent to the wrong person. This is Rob bait. I'm gonna give this to Rob.
Third of these games. They did a game called Verdun, and they did Tannenberg, and now we're on Isanzo. And Isanzo is exciting because, the Italian front World War One doesn't get enough attention. It's a gnarly little front. Because if you think, boy, attacking over the Alps seems hard, you'd be right. Which is pretty much why
Mountains suck.
like it's pretty much why like hundreds of thousands of people died to like fail to advance or move a line more than like a mile across 4 years. And
Jesus.
why Italy Italy was a newly
Sounds like a
formed-
fun game to play.
We're gonna get to that, Patrick. Also topical. You can draw a pretty direct line from the failed invasion of Austria-Hungary by Italy to the rise of Italian fascism. Like the fact that like Italy is a new country.
Did that shitty woman win? Did like the vote?
I don't think she's won yet, but it's like the exit polling looks pretty decisive.
Well, when you have the New York Times doing fawning photography profiles, you know that things are heading in the right direction.
Yeah, it's look, the Times just wants to understand other points of view.
You got to make sure the fascist has a really cool photo to go alongside with your lead. That's just the way of things.
But yeah, so like, so this campaign is sort of historically infamous, and just nightmare conditions as you can imagine, because like tons of it is being fought at high altitude in places you can't even entrench. You're just running around like slabs of granite, and getting mowed down. Anyway, yeah. Ren.
I was gonna say, I'm watching footage of this. Looks sick. Like visually, these trailers look sick. I'm guessing that the game doesn't live up to it.
It really depends on what you are signing up for. That is the thing. You've sort of touched on it. So, Isanzo, the spirit of Battlefield 1 is alive and well in Isanzo. Like, looks great. The sense of place on some of these maps is incredible. Fighting across these, like, alpine, like, mountaintops and valleys, dizzying. The quality of the light in the game is really well done. It's really different from a lot of military shooters you've seen. It is like an entire game made out of the map in Battlefield 1 was like Monte Grappa or something. But the impossible one with like the two central bunkers that was just like that were uncapturable. That's all cool. There's a couple things that, like I've laid out, this is it's World War One, and it's like one of the toughest fronts of World War One, and so the vibe of this game is an awful lot of you spawn, you run through your trench line to the place where you can start advancing on the enemy trench line. You run out of your trench line, you take like 30 steps, and you get got, and you have no idea where that came from, none whatsoever. Maybe you stop and you start trying to be like, where are these shots even coming from? No idea. You are like, the people with rifles are firing from so far away that they are literally like a pixel or two wide somewhere on your screen, just like blazing away at the places where your team is sort of filtering out of its trenches. There is almost a gleeful indifference to like, is this a good way for the match to open? Is this a fun first objective to take? Isanzo in many ways does not seem to care, which I kind of admire, but also is kind of jaw-dropping to experience. There's one mission where like the first position you start in, you're spawning like trench, basically. You are at the foot of a giant giant shale hillside. Literally the defending side, I think it's the Austrians, are staring down this hill into your spawn. clear lanes of fire. And you have trenches, you have like firing loops, but like importantly, they don't provide even full cover. Like you are basically can be hittable almost anywhere. And from there, you got to make your way out of this and start like shimmy shallying up the shale slide on their like hilltop strongholds. And playing this map, like every time I play it, it's like the first 15 minutes of the match are just you spawning, you getting mowed down in your spawn trench or like 2 steps outside. You have no idea like where you're getting hit from, whatever. But I will say, like, is as goofy as all it is, when it starts to break the other way, when the team starts to like just like grab its little fingernails into small positions where people can start like collecting themselves and getting like decent firing points from, it feels really cool as the like structure of the map starts to like bend toward the team that's been getting massacred the entire time. That feels awesome.
I was going to say, did you have any instances where you were the one guy who made it through the charge? And does that feeling land where you're like, oh, fuck, everyone I was with just got, but I am in a new position that I can actually do something from. And now I have to kind of support the next wave coming in.
You get that feeling a fair bit, which is kind of the cool thing. But like one match on that map, there's one time where I basically people were making a direct assault on this like command post on a like outcropping on this ridgeline. And if you're attacking directly at the outpost, it's a pretty steep climb, and it's pretty tough to take. But so there was a point where I had wandered off to the left flank, and there's an objective you can attack over there. But I managed to sort of like sneak my way around to this position. I couldn't advance. I could hear everyone continuing to attack the left flank objective. They were going over this little like rocky rock pile, and I could just hear them dying on the other side. Like they would go over and you just hear people getting all that shit. So I'm like, I'm not going over there. I'm gonna belly up. But I realized once I did that and I faced back east, I had a firing lane on the command post that everyone was trying to take on the right flank. And so from there, I'm like, nobody knows I'm here. I actually am able to shoot the reinforcement line to that command post. And so I'm just standing there, 70 rounds of ammunition and starting to plink away at these guys. And I can see like the entire attack unfolding where like, guys, like waves of dudes, like waves of little specks basically wearing my side's uniforms are running up this hill. And I am like plinking little specks that are wearing the other uniform. And bit by bit, I'm like, oh, like I'm actually like, because I'm here now, they couldn't man a really important like trench that was blocking one of the little paths up into the command post. And so now I'm seeing my team make their way in. And so you're providing fire support that way. And like, the attackers are getting closer and closer. And then cool stuff happens. Like, you start seeing grenades being tossed in, and now the entire place is just blown the hell apart. But the things that are really there to break the stalemates is the ability for officers to call in things like air raids, where you'll have flights of bombers come in and just carpet bomb like a small area, or maybe more importantly, for like just making it hard to pile more dudes into an advantageous firing position. It's things like poison gas, where you'll have sides like deploying like thick clouds of phosgene or something like that, which is like this eerie green gas, and like everyone has to put on gas masks to deal with it, so you get the like impeded field of view effect when that's in play. And 2, it's like, unlike just calling in smoke rounds, which is like totally dense and you can't see through it at all, the chemical weapons are a little more, you can see there's a little more like visibility within them, but it's still pretty bad. And so like when there's gas deployed, people tend to not like to run into it because like you have such poor situational awareness from like the lack of sight and the fact you're wearing masks. So the thing that really tends to bust up these stalemates is once this match runs a little bit, we're going to be able to call in massive like area denial supers, or we'll be able to call in like airstrikes, or the team will like use its mortars, etc. So there's a lot of that in play. I haven't played around with the officer stuff too much, so I don't fully know how the mechanics of that are working. But it seems like a thing you can bank. Like I've definitely seen like back-to-back airstrikes launched. So it does not seem like it's totally on a cooldown that's team-wide. It might be like officer-wide.
I have a... Oh, please, Kato.
I was just gonna ask, how do you feel the like accuracy of the weapons kind of compares to that other game we were playing? Oh my god,
Hell Let Loose.
Hell Let Loose, yeah. Because I feel like
how do you
the plinking of tiny specks is not necessarily a thing that you could reliably do in Hell Let Loose. Like there was enough variance in the bullet travel that it was closer range in general.
So yes, no, you've put your finger right on it. I think one of the things that's weird about this game is on the one hand, it's like history, vibes, etc. And on the other hand, there feels like there's such a strong undercurrent of for gamers. And so it's like we made a game with 8 different flavors of hit scan bolt action rifles. And
Oh, they're hit scan?
that's how they feel. I haven't done I need to go stand somewhere off in a match and just plink a target and see if there's bullet drop.
Right.
But to me, it does not feel like there is. Like every time I've been trying to compensate for ranges, I feel like I'm missing. But like the minute I lean into pretend it's an op, suddenly, bam, people just dropping.
Done. Wow.
That's wild. That's one of the things is like I'm a sucker for the friction of weapons that do feel like loose the way these things are.
Right.
Ren.
So I'm actually looking at it right now. I'm looking at a dev blog. The thing that they say is that the game does have bullet drop. Here's the write-up. Bullet drop is also a factor in Asanzo, but given typical engagement ranges and the high muzzle velocities for most of the weapons in game, you likely won't notice it very often. For you snipers at the back of the map, you may need to adjust your sights to hit perfect headshots over long distances. I've actually spent a lot of time calibrating my brain for this recently because I'm playing a lot of Hunt Showdown with Galt, and I now, whenever I play Hunt, I have a map on my second monitor that shows the entire game map in 50 by 50 grids, 50 meter by 50 meter grids, so I can accurately estimate distances because the muzzle velocities in that game are low enough where you are always going to be feeling travel time and bullet drop. And I wouldn't be surprised if, I'm actually curious, and I'm gonna do some research now, but I wonder if the jump in muzzle velocity between the late 19th century and World War I is significant enough.
It's pretty huge.
Yeah. Okay, then.
Because like I will say, this is sort of the golden age of the bolt action rifle, where these things are very long range, very accurate. So I can see it, but man, but the thing is, I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying like I'm sitting there with a bolt action and I'm hitting a pixel.
Right.
I don't know what that translates to in range, but it feels far.
Right.
Here's the thing.
It nails them.
If you can see a pixel, someone is closer than you think.
I know.
That is the thing a thing I've learned about distances is that like everything is way, way closer than you think in terms of like meters. So like chances are if you can see someone at the very, very edge of your vision in a game like this, you are looking at someone who is at best 100 meters away. And at that point, if you're firing a rifle with 830 meters per second of muzzle velocity, you are going to be landing that shot if it's shot over 100 meters.
I think one of the things that I'm trying to get here to though is the fact that I noticed it in Hell Let Loose. I keep forgetting the name of that game. And I feel like this being earlier would have a similar feel. And like I feel like they've probably overtuned it to make it vibe more with what you would expect, even if technically there would be more of a accuracy in some of those guns in Hell Let Loose.
Here's a caveat though. So in between, World War I, pretty much every army fields bolt action rifles because those are the best, most fast firing rifles that exist in the time period. And some armies like really start emphasizing marksmanship at this point, kind of needlessly as it turns out. But by Hell Let Loose time, you know, when I think about like the M1 Garand, that's a semi-automatic rifle that, you know, you're gonna be popping off multiple rounds, so maybe only the first one flies totally true. And even there, I'm not sure it was as accurate as things like the like Mosin Nagant rifle. And then everything else you're using Hell Let Loose is obviously like a submachine gun, or like, their first attempts at building like assault rifles.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And those things are really like just raise a hell of a clatter, but don't necessarily like put rounds on target. And I will say, when I was playing infantry who do use like the longest bolt action rifles in the game, I had this feeling a lot more. When I switched to like assault classes that are carrying like cut down carbine rifles, I did start to feel like I was getting slightly fewer of those like quick read, like flick shots than I was before. Which makes sense for something that's like in the carbine family. But it does still feel like it does change the vibe a little bit, where like so much of Hell Let Loose feels like it's about positioning with the team and all that. Whereas this feels like there's a little bit more room for the like, I'm just gonna R.I.P. to the Italian army in 1914, 1915. I would simply clutch it out. There's a bit of that DNA in this game. Something else, by the way, there is also channeling a bit of the Battlefield. Random. I did something real stupid. I'm gonna tell you about in a second because of this photo. It's also channeling a bit of the Battlefield 5 build fortifications in the field type thing, because you can do that tons of places. Like the engineer class is running around smacking together sandbag walls and barbed wire to impede advance, and so there's a ton of that happening as well, where you can like, as a team spends time in a good position, they will dig in deeper and deeper. It doesn't go as far as Battlefield 5, where that thing sort of had modular strong points that like, just if you keep investing time and building things up, there were like attach points where you build basically a fort out of the entire thing. Here it's just more like, you know, you can lay down a ring of sandbags pretty easily. But what you can't do is like construct a like sandbag trench line out of nowhere. The game doesn't seem to let you do that, but it's still kind of cool, you know, when you're up there and you're helping out your team by filling in the gaps between firing points with sandbags, and suddenly it's like, well, now everyone is like has access to this entire firing line without ever exposing themselves until they pop up to shoot. That's kind of cool.
Is that set to a specific class, you said, or just like can
the engineer class is the one that has the most construction abilities, but riflemen can also do some stuff, like build up reload points and such. I think engineers might also be able to build up MG nests, which are really cool if they're well positioned. They can work, but man, they are bullet magnets. Like it is. Sometimes you'll have a line of people in the trench next to the MG, just waiting for like the guy goes up. He gets like 5 seconds on the MG, and like bang, dead. And everyone like waits 3 seconds. It's like, they're probably not still aiming at the MG nest. Go on, give it a
Get
shot.
in there,
but somebody needs to work the MG, because suppression is a huge thing in this game. That's one of the other things that I had to sort of adjust to, is like, if you're only waiting to like have eyes on target before shooting, you're kind of not doing what your team needs to be doing, which is sometimes the most valuable thing you can do is, I think somebody is probably behind that rocky outcrop. and they're probably popping out and shooting occasionally. My job here is just keep shooting at it.
Right.
I mean, like, as someone like that's Valorant, baby. You got to pre-fire that angle. You're dealing with 5 people. If you take out one of them, you ruin their chances of a push. Sometimes you just pre-fire the angle for a while, and someone will walk out right into it.
Well,
and suddenly you win the round.
And in this game, like, it's even more impactful because if somebody is like tucked around that corner, the shots whipping past the angle, if they're like in proximity, their vision will start to wobble and blur, and so they can't. They like even if they now come out around that corner, they can't see shit. And they certainly can't aim. So like your job becomes just like rattle their cage a little bit. Ren, you posted a picture of this, looks like Levi's Stadium.
Yes, I did.
And yeah, so we're yeah, you're right. Like this is a wide angle lens. It looks like. And yeah, so this is like probably mezzanine level, looking down across the field. And yeah, like the opposite end zone, people are specs who are standing behind it.
Yeah,
Like
that's about 150 meters. If you fire a shot with the muzzle velocities you're talking about at that distance, you're looking at like less than a tenth of a second, or like a quarter of a second before it hits.
Which leads me to another point. I maybe made a mistake early on that I haven't corrected because I'm like, no, I thought shit. I'm shit in this bed. Now I've got to.
Now I have to lie in it.
Yeah. When I loaded the game up, its default field of view was like 60. I was like, the fuck? 60? For me? No.
Gamer? Rob Zachney?
Yes, with my widescreen monitor? Excuse me. No. I need situational awareness. I need the slider maxed out at 90. And I was like, fuck it, 90. And so it is possible that everything feels considerably farther away from me in this game than is necessarily supposed to. It is possible that looking down the sight, at someone 100 yards away should not look like they're 1 pixel wide, but they do for me because I need that panoramic view so that I can like read and react to what's happening.
Oh no.
Rob, if it helps, I am also the FOV bitch in a video. I feel like I become less accurate the lower my FOV is. So when I've been playing a lot of Hunt Showdown recently with Galt, a lot of the sights in that game are real fucking big or take up a lot of space on your screen.
Yes.
And so in raising the FOV, I am able to more, because people are smaller, but also so are the sights. The sights are closer to me, makes them smaller. And so I can more accurately line up shots because I'm not looking at a fucking 3 meter wide hunk of iron directly in my eyes, as opposed to like a thin little sighting line. And so I don't know. I think that high FOV is usually, once I get used to it, is a benefit. I mean, Rob, you weren't here. Last week I was talking about Hyperdemon. I play Hyperdemon with 180 degree FOV, baby. We're talking full 360 degree vision out here. So I am the little FOV freak. So I stand by you in your wide angle 90 FOV life.
My real question here is, did you try it, or was that just a setting you saw and immediately changed?
Oh, no, I started at 90.
Which I was not asking you.
Rob. I meant Rob.
We should take a break.
We here at Waypoint are lifelong learners, and people are always saying this about the crew here at Waypoint. We approach situations with eyes wide open, with hearts ready to take on new information, and carry us into the next days.
Well said. We'll be back after this. And we're back. Ren, you've been playing a little game called Road Warden.
I have. Road Warden is like a slightly more traditional, like choose your own adventure, text-based game about being someone who goes to this like small patch of land outside of major cities in a like post multiple apocalypse fiction setting. We are post so many apocalypses that the world is a
Do we
special
know all
kind
the
of shithole.
apocalypses? What's happened? How what's the stack?
The most recent one was an empire collapsed under its own weight and led to the fall of basically every single city therein. And now monsters are so prevalent that even if you live in a major city, chances are that at night there is a very real possibility that a saurian or some shit is gonna crawl out onto the pier and start fucking parading through your streets.
If they just had some invisible wasps, I think they could get a deal with that.
I would
That'll
agree.
clear that right up.
It'll eat the eggs. Well, actually, let me amend this. That's one of the ways the world can be, because one of the things that Road Wardens does is it, much like I think it pulls a lot from like modern tabletop role playing games. Characters ask you about the city you came from, and it's your job to answer them. And so if they say to you, "Hey, what is Havloven like right now?" You can be like, "Oh, the people are eating well, blah, 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 blah." But the cool thing about it is it's almost Disco Elysium-esque in that every answer feels like it can coexist with the others. So the answer, "Oh, sometimes monsters come from the pier in the middle of the night and then walk through the streets." You can also be like, I mean, there's some districts that are totally safe. And you are slightly adjusting the way you're framing things that kind of gives you an idea of what your character's perspective is and relationship to the city was over time. I think that every single line of dialogue that you say about the city can theoretically be true, which is to say that, like, it is a world that feels deeply reflective of what it means to live in a place with like high income disparity, and to be constantly face to face with that fact, and how you frame it to people says a lot about who you interact with on your day-to-day basis. And
When I looked up this game, the first response from one of the reviews was, "I really hope you like reading." Some games have text, and then some games have text, and the screenshots for this game are, "Do you want to read a novel?" Which is not.
The art also looks very pretty. I love the way
Art
it's like
is
you got the pane
gorgeous.
of
Oh my
illustration on the
God.
left-hand side, and then the central text. But like the art that's there looks pretty evocative.
It is extremely evocative. The art is really good. The writing is, I would say, really great. It is a lot more restrained than you would think for a game like this. I think a lot of games like this fall into the trap of leading into some pretty purple prose.
Yes.
This game does not. It is, I would say, extremely restrained.
You almost
in its
have to be
writing.
given how much you're reading, right? Like it would be. There's like no.
I would say the people who are prone to like writing an extremely purple prose are actually probably as inclined as anyone to be verbose as hell.
Oh,
Like they
no.
won't like some of them might have the poet's instinct of like say less and let the mind fill in, but some will be like, "No, I'm just gonna keep talking."
Yeah. No. This is luckily not one of those games. I would say there's a couple lines here or there that will make me go, "Oh, nice." But its writing is great in an understated way, which is very exciting for me because it's like there are some games like Disco Elysium where I think about lines from that game every single day without fail. I don't have a line like that from Road Warden yet because it's also telling a different kind of story, right?
Yeah.
Disco Elysium is a melodrama. Road Warden is not. It is the like real robot equivalent of fantasy, right? It is a dark fantasy world that is treating every single thing in it with the meticulous materiality of like someone making a historical drama, like a real like, you know what I mean?
Well, and you saying that like the fact there's some lines that you return to in Disco Elysium, but like this game isn't. I was thinking about this a little bit. Hilary Mantel just died. The author of the Wolf Hall trilogy about Henry VIII's like right-hand man turned enemy, Thomas Cromwell. But like I read I would say Wolf Hall is like one of my favorite books of like the last decade. Like an incredible novel. And it hit me even as I was reading. I was like, I don't think there's a single line I would quote anyone from this book. Like I don't like I was like flipping back through like what have I highlighted? Which is like usually I'm like, hey, that's nice. I'm gonna highlight that. Come back and look at that. It wasn't that kind of book. Yet like it's an incredible work. It has incredible prose, but there's no point where like it's necessarily like flashy in that way. It is just the steady accumulation of detail that like the work is the whole. That's what sticks with you. That not my impression of that novel is indelible. And I think one reason my impression as a whole is indelible is because there's not passages that I get hung up on.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments reading recently, broadly, was a moment like that where I was reading a book on, it's called Radical Yiddishland. It is about the like quote unquote Yiddishland area of Europe and the leftist organizing that happened there leading up to and through the Holocaust. And kind of what the long-term arc of Jewish radicalism has been in that particular region and with people who survived the Holocaust. And so there's this paragraph in that book that I remember reading. I could not quote you a single line from it, but I read that paragraph and I stopped in my fucking tracks because I was like, this is the most efficient writing I have seen in years. Absolutely gorgeous. And from time to time, that is how Road Wardens feels, where it is like, okay, cool. You are being efficient in a way that I am extremely, extremely impressed by.
So I'm looking at these screenshots, and there's a couple questions I have just in terms of like how you approach the world, and then what resources you're kind of husbanding through this game. Like what? Because I'm sure there's a lot of things you can do in this game.
Yes,
but what are the ways that like you accumulate power or options as your character?
So it is, again, pulling from a lot of current tabletop role-playing game trends, deeply attached to what resources you have access to. Having objects, having things that you can like interface with the world through is how you accumulate like stability and power over time. Because let me put this like the game setting into context. You are a road warden. You are someone who comes from the city to this little patch of land to be someone who acts as a messenger between villages, because going on the roads, even in the middle of the day, is something that will get you fucking killed. Like there will be things on the road that will murk you easily. Even if we're talking about an hour-long walk between point A and point B. That is the level of like untamed, quote unquote, untamed wilderness we're looking at. And so you have, while you're playing this game, multiple resources to manage. Your health, the quality of your armor, how tidy your appearance is, because how tidy your appearance is tied to how much people trust you. If you are a spellcaster, what your spell situation is, and your hunger. And so these are the resources that really kind of drive what your character can do, the most basic resources that drive what you can do in a given moment, right? Do you have enough pneuma, which is the game's like version of mana, which is an extreme understatement for how it fits in the setting, but do you have enough pneuma to cast this spell in this specific situation? And also, do you have spellcasting tools? Because not every character does. The warrior does not start with spellcasting tools. That is not a way that they know how to interface with the world through. The scholar starts with alchemical tools. No one else does. I don't know if you can even get them. And so there's this entire branch of the game that is about concocting potions and like doing Witcher-esque, can I enhance my abilities through potions stuff that you just don't have access to because you do not have the resource that lets you do it. Alternatively, you might be able to get more out of taking a bath because you happened to buy tooth cleaning supplies 5 hours ago at the beginning of the game. And you're like, okay, cool. I'm at this river. Nothing here is going to kill me. I'm going to brush my teeth real quick because I feel fucking gross. And so managing all of these things, in addition to how much money you have, which is hard to come by for a really long time, is like kind of the engine that drives this game. In a way that I find makes my brain feels good.
Yeah, this looks cool as hell. I think I want to give this one a shot. This looks. I'm
Right.
curious, like, how often are you on different tracks? You talk about like having different classes
Yes.
that you play around with. How wide does it feel like the narrative threads can play out?
I would say pretty wide because the thing I didn't mention is what your character is there to do. This is revealed within like the first 30 seconds of the game. This is not
Yeah.
a spoiler, I promise. Your character is there because the city wants to expand and wants to expand its in like its zone of influence over the world. Which in this setting is extremely dangerous because the more people fuck with nature will hit back in coordinated ways. There is these things called I forget what they're called. The term is slipping my mind, but basically, if you cut down enough trees, things will happen to you. Like there will be a pack of wolves that just bursts out of the woods and starts tearing through your town, and that escalates over time. So making headway into natural environments is extremely dangerous, must be done gradually, and must be done in specific ways. And so the city wants to exert influences of control over this area. And so your job is to go in there, officially, your job is to go in there and start setting up trade routes. You are going in there to be like, hey, the city is going to be trying to exert its influence, and we're all going to be really cool about it, okay? And some people are like, yeah, sure, we'll be cool about it. And other people are like, no, we fucking will not. And it is your job in 40 days, or 30 days in the game's harder difficulty, to go in there and try and prepare this area as well as you can before these people get here. And they will come.
Mm-hmm.
That is the note. It's not like you can be like, don't come. They will. And so you can either choose to make it a really easy place for the city to colonize in this way that feels very reminiscent of the kind of colonization that happens in Europe to other European nations. I think specifically about the colonization of Ireland. That feels like the way this game talks about pagan religions versus the organized faith feels very, very much certain colonization periods in Europe. It is engaged and interested in those topics and is interested in the ways in which both like material trade, but also environments and like material structures affect interpersonal relationships more than externalizing like people's feelings. Like you're not going to get so angry that you do a spell better. That's not something that you're going to be able to do. And in a way that feels like really exciting. And I can feel like I can already see the different directions in which the game can diverge. I've already seen multiple quests where I was like, oh, this could have diverged wildly. And also the characters are well realized. And so even when the outcome doesn't diverge significantly, the writing you get and the tone you get does, in a way that I find like really exciting and like well done.
Patrick, I want to turn to you now in terms of talking about like, games about communities and their quirks. You've been playing Return to Monkey Island, and I wasn't here Friday. I'm curious, like, what's your history with Monkey Island? And because this is not contiguous with where that series ended up, right? This is famously Ron Gilbert being like, everything after me is not or a different canon. We're going back to Monkey Island 2.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how I don't want to. The game has a really interesting framing device that I don't want to spoil. Like they've sat on it for a reason, and it's really interesting and fun when you play the game, especially if you have a history with it. Yeah, my history with adventure games are like playing all of the LucasArts ones, but for some reason not playing like Monkey Island 1 and 2 are just before. Like so, It's like I come in like the Full Throttle era, right? So it's like a little past Monkey Island 1 and 2, Loom, stuff like that. But like, otherwise I bought Full Throttle on its own, but like sometimes you'd go and they'd have like those Lucas and Sierra would have them. It was like the discs that were like, there here are 6 discs, 6 CDs in here, and like here's a bunch of games. Like I played a lot of like the original King's Field. So like I spent a lot of time playing adventure games and quite liking them, although frequently being someone who just looked up solutions to things. Like it was rare that I clicked with like puzzle designers on the games, but I find the act of exploring and discovering and listening to clever writing to be really attractive. Probably the most I vibed with the reason I vibed the most the LucasArts stuff, in terms of like being able to be in sync with what a esoteric puzzle designer is trying to accomplish, as I pace every item on the screen and every other screen, hoping to discover the solution. Sam and Max is probably the one that crystallized the genre to me. I probably played Sam and Max Hit the Road like a dozen times when I was a kid. And that was also like one of those early games with voice acting that was like revelatory that like how transformative it could be for the personality of a game. Because frequently you could get those games on disc, no voice acting, and then you'd get the CD version and you'd have voice acting, and the games were much better for it. So that's kind of like the landscape of me in adventure games. And like this game is interesting because it comes, after there's Monkey Island 1 and 2. What's the third one? Escape from Monkey Island, I think, which is actually the good one with the incredible animation. That one I quite liked. I didn't play the 3D one that was on like PS2 and Xbox and GameCube, like Monkey Island 4. I forget what it's actually called, but that one was not Curse of Monkey Island, might be it. And I think I played 1 or 2 episodes of that original Telltale like Monkey Island series, and I thought it was charming, but like for whatever reason, never like saw it all the way through. I do think people quite liked what Telltale did with that, but I didn't see it all the way to the end. And so I come to this one mostly curious, like, what does it mean for like a Ron Gilbert to return to a series like this? I think I'd mentioned on a previous podcast, it might have been Fridays, where what's the game that he worked on just before this that he kickstarted? Thimbleweed, yes, did not. Like I beat that game, but that was a game that I at no point was I able to vibe with the puzzle design. I was looking up,
and that was a pretty widely shared reaction, right? Like that was a game that was a widely unloved game.
I think so. I can't fully speak to that. I like, it's been far enough that I've forgotten, but I know that I liked the world and the characters and hated everything about the interactions in it. Like and at a certain point, because I hit so many roadblocks with I don't know what to do, I don't know what I should be doing, I don't even know what I should be poking around at, I sort of just gave up and like just loaded a walkthrough and was like, anytime I hit any obstacle mentally, I just didn't even have the energy to even try. It was like, I don't care. I'm just going to look it up and then see where the story goes and get to the end of it. And so this one is really interesting because it is like running in the opposite direction. It is a game that is well aware that there are hopefully going to be people playing this that are either new or are old and cranky and like want to have the game a little more catered to them, and not having to jump through the same hoops as players. So there was a couple things that it does really well. Like one, it has this thing called the scrapbook that like walks you through all the story events of the previous games in like a really clever and funny way. The writing here is like top notch, like laugh out loud funny. It's like, it's really, really well written. And the other thing is that the game starts with what they call a casual and a hard mode. And essentially the game's like, do you want us to just take out some of the shitty puzzles? Like, I don't have the language in front of me, but it's very much like, hey, there's a way we used to design these games. Do you want to play a mode where we keep all those in, or would you just like not? And I raced to not. I'm like, I don't. And I think it's like really healthy and interesting that the game recognizes that almost like the designers are going to be inclined to make those, and that some players are just, and that these designers have done this long enough, they can almost identify those puzzles that are going to kind of like drive people. Either they find out through the actual creation process or in focus testing that like, oh shit, we made one of those again. All right, take that out of casual mode, put that into hard mode.
I feel like Dave Gilbert, the adventure game designer, behind like Gemini Rue and Unavowed and such like that. I remember, I think he sort of like famously been like, I make games that are a lot like the old like LucasArts or pixel art period point and click adventures with none of the hard puzzles, because nobody liked that. or it's like not nobody liked it, but you know what I mean? It was like, why did adventure games like start to struggle? It was people burned out on the puzzles well before they burned out on like the conceit of those games.
Right. I was constantly, I mean, like I was so excited for The Dig. Because like Steven Spielberg is like making a puzzle is like making an adventure game with LucasArts. Like, holy fucking shit. And then I played The Dig and was like, that was about the era in which I was hitting a wall on wanting to play them like I didn't want to do the puzzles anymore, or like I didn't want to do the puzzles how they were doing the puzzles, but I was always brought like the interaction, like scouring a place, clicking on things, discovering, like building out a world. I always found that attractive. It was just then when it became the time to drag an item over the 7 interactable items on the screen. One smart thing this game does, you hit the tab button, it shows you everything interactable on the screen. Every little thing that you can touch. And so you can do the bit where it's like, it's not like you walk in a room and it's all like heat maps. But if you are, I'm about to leave, shit, do you think I missed something? Like I feel like I've seen everything, but I want to double check. You hit tab, everything comes up. And that's like a really nice, smart way where they can keep doing what is often fun in these games, which is that they are not quite hidden puzzle games, but it is, the joy is like moving the cursor over things and seeing what highlights. And that's part of the discovery process. And there's a lot of humor that is like embedded in the player discovering it that way. But then when it also is like, hey, like I don't want to move to the next room without knowing I did everything in this room, hit tab, you know, see which ones I haven't clicked on. And then I can like feel like more safe moving on to the next area. And then the other thing the game does is has an utterly brilliant hint system. And so this is also the problem with games of this type. I have like fond memories of playing the Tex Murphy adventure games. And I've told the story in years past, but did not understand how 1-900 numbers worked. I just thought I'm calling to get a hint from a customer service agent on the other side of the line. What my parents discovered was like that costs like $1 a minute or whatever to call. And so I was banned from calling to get hints for the Tex Murphy adventure games. And in here, it frequently when you're like in a puzzle game, especially, or an adventure game, I don't want a solution. I want to like message a friend that's like, I don't really know what to do here. Can you sort of like reframe it or like nudge me in the right direction? And most walkthroughs, by their very nature of like, I'm Googling a thing, give me the answer, are going to be straightforward. You know, it makes sense. How else are you going to, you know, write something that's searchable? What's here is like the game starts with the being very gentle. It's like, hey, you're not here because you're stupid. You just need to be nudged. And so it's like, like the game, you hit the hint book, it opens up, and in front of you are all the different paths that you've unlocked, like that you have to go do a thing. Like I needed to find a mop. I needed to be forgiven for not returning a book. I needed to do find this recipe. And so those are all listed here, and it's like, which one are you having trouble with? And so this one I clicked on just to kind of see how it worked was like, oh, I need to be forgiven for not returning this book. And it starts with, you know, ever increasingly more specific questions that try to reframe what's in front of you, and like really drags out giving you specifics, but it's still like helpful reframing of like the information you've already taken in as the player. Because maybe you've also forgotten. You're coming back to a puzzle and it's like, I don't really remember why I'm doing this. And the game like walks you through that, and then like gets up to a very clear line of like, do you just want to know what it is? And then it'll tell you, but it gets you there. And so I solved one of the solutions that involved being forgiven for not returning a book. And then I was like, well, I want to, right before I actually turned in the item to like checklist the puzzle and move on, I was like, I want to read exactly how the game gets you there. And it's just really smart. It essentially, like, just in a very gentle way helps you get there. And then if you just want to know the solution, you know, here it is. And like, that is so useful in a game in which I just want to keep making progress. And as soon as I hit friction, well, then I want to go to the hint system and realize, am I not getting this because I don't even know what the question, right? Like oftentimes in adventure games, I don't know what the question the game is even asking of me. And like, that's when having the solution or a hint is helpful, because I might not even be thinking about approaching the problem in the way that the designers are hoping that I'm thinking about it. And so that as like a meet you in the middle sort of thing is just really useful and smart. And the other thing it does, I didn't play the game over the weekend because I usually don't have time to play games over the weekend. And when I came back, the game knew that and does as part of its framing device, which I don't want to explain, but it basically like has two characters in front of you and it's like, hey, do you remember what you've done so far? And then you can ask questions and the game will like set up the story and plot beats for you again before you jump back into your
That's really
save.
smart.
That's very
and you can
cute.
turn that off. It's in the options menu. But it's how many of us have like gone back to an old game and like forgot the mechanics, and like I've begged on this podcast numbers of times where like, especially a big open world game, like just let me play the tutorial again. Like can I just do that again so I understand how all the buttons work? And this in a story game seems like that'd be more challenging to do, but they have found a really clever solution to arrive at that. And like I said, you can also turn it off if you just don't want that part of it. And the other thing they have in the options menu is, I didn't turn this on, but it's essentially like, do you want the director's cut of the script? Which is like, and they say, they're like, it's longer, it's messier, but it's got more stuff. Do you want that version? And like, you can just click that on and like get an extended version of the script that, they chop down for, probably the right reasons, but they're like, I don't know, if you just really like our writing, here's more of it. And that's like buried in one of the text menus. And I just like, it's really smart.
Do you know if it's just like dialogue is longer, or are there like different, like, are there other paths? Is it content?
I don't
or
think
just,
the game's fundamentally different. My
Right.
guess is just like, it's just a less tight script. And it's like, as they went through the game and, made the script like feel better, that like, naturally stuff like that was taken out. And it's just a really clever self-aware thing that, would be fun to flip on, especially if you were playing the game.
So I don't know if you can answer
time.
this without giving away some of the framing device. So feel free to just sort of ignore this question, but I haven't played these games in ages.
Mhm.
I think Escape, the beautiful animated one we were talking
Yep.
about, I think that was the last one I did play. But like, I couldn't really tell you what happened in Monkey Island 2.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
This game is clearly designed to reward people who have that history, but at no point, I'm with you. Like I think I played the XBLA Monkey Island 1, like when they put out those re-releases years back, but I still don't remember the specific plot beats. And again, like they do this really good scrapbook feature where it takes all of 5 minutes to have a bunch of like clever and fun dialogue explain to you the beats of 1 and 2. And I never played 2. I only played 1. And I don't feel like I've lost any context whatsoever. Like it feels as though it is both a fresh adventure for people who have just heard these games are good, but also there are going to be small details that you pick up on as a fan that will be rewarding. But I think it's a totally easy game to just slip into even as your first one, because these games are not plot dependent.
Man, I miss the era of the BioWare recap, off-site recap that lets you import your save. I do miss that style of recapping. So it's good. I'm glad to hear that there is a thing to help chart people along.
Yeah, it's just smart for games to recognize that players come back to them in different states.
And to put some thought into like, what are the things to catch you up on,
Right.
depending on what you've been up to is
Right.
really, really cool. That sounds awesome. I'm really glad. Like, it's really fraught for an original creator like this to return after all this time to like a beloved franchise that maybe in some ways looms larger in the imagination than it does like in reality. And I'm really kind of thrilled that it sounds like
It feels like it has not
It
lost a
worked.
beat. It really feels like this is a true Monkey Island 3, and one that looks absolutely gorgeous. Like all the trailers and screenshots suggested to me that, so it portrays as 2D, but the world and characters are, or at least the characters are modeled in 3D. So there is depth to them that is really not apparent when watching a trailer or looking at screenshots. They like there's a flattening that happens in in viewing the game through that media, but then in the game itself, you can really see and feel the depth. It's a gorgeous art. I'm glad they went somewhere different than just let's make more detailed pixel art. There's certainly plenty of like that can work, but they really went for something different here and like nailed it. It's a really fun experience. And now I'm excited. They're teasing that they're gonna revisit Maniac Mansion, which is a game that I also didn't play because that was slightly before the era of Lucas stuff. But if they pulled this off, like I would imagine they'd be able to revisit Maniac Mansion as well, which is exciting. And also, I'm glad that Gilbert's making these types of games instead of 2 Deathspank games. Just you know what, that was a different. You know what, people were trying things, and I'm just glad this is where we've ended up with Ron Gilbert. He's back home, very comfortable, and his grumpy nature slots in well with what him and Dave Grossman are doing here.
Do you want to take a little turn in the question bucket before we
Can we watch something before The Last of Us trailer dropped?
Yeah. Yes.
Can we watch that?
We should.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Link
Let
me.
me pull it up.
That's Kato charging up our
Battlefield.
trailer energy.
It'd be really funny. That'd be the wrong tone for this.
All right, let me open this in a new tab.
Oh, that actress. Fucking, she was great in Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We ready
Oh,
to...
is this little-
I
is this
also
little-
think she's the
little
star of
Mormon
the new
or whatever.
Lena Dunham movie. Isn't that true? I think she is.
Maybe.
All right. Frame one. When on time.is.
Oh, we can just do 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, I'll just
right?
do these.
Okay, got it.
Are we going on 0?
It's 3, 2, 1, go,
Click.
and go
Okay.
on go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Go on.
I'm ready.
3, 2, 1, go.
The roses have faded, there's frost at
Ooh, that-
my door. The birds
That's
in
environmental
the
art,
morning
Rob.
don't sing
That menacing folk rock. That's
Oh,
The
yeah.
Last of Us, baby.
The valley
I love that there's the writing on the wall. Just like, hey, keep that. You gotta keep it honest with the video game.
goes dry. The darkness is falling, the sky has turned gray. A hound in the distance is starting to fade.
This looks a lot like the game.
Alone and forsaken by fate and by man.
We should really watch Chernobyl, bro.
Hear me,
I really want to. Yes, this is gonna be my excuse to finally watch past the first episode.
forsaken by fate and by man.
Damn, I need to watch Chernobyl.
This is your chance.
Hear me, please to my hand.
Hold that shot.
To my hand.
You keep her alive.
To my hand. Please to my hand.
And you said everything right. Save who you can save.
Oh, please understand.
Well, they didn't show very much, but it looks pretty good.
Yeah, that's solid.
There's a lot of beats that are Rob having just played that game. Like
Yeah.
when
I
the
didn't
car
even-
goes crashing through, is like, wow. I
didn't even do it when the remake happened. Like, I haven't played that game in many years at this point, and I was like, oh, I remember. Yeah,
I did not expect this to feel so shot
remember
for
that
shot.
It feels very like, yeah, they're pulling very specific shots
Just
out
I
of
mean,
the
look,
game.
That first game, like we had that whole conversation.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
game is narratively like those are solid bones, absolutely. The problem is I also don't feel like that is a game where I'm like, man, I wish there were a different format to enjoy this story. Like I might have liked something that felt a little bit more like a reimaginative like adaptation.
It does make sense though that like this first
one-to-one.
teaser trailer is going to be a bunch of iconic sort of shots though. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it is as much as I loved Chernobyl and everything that did. I have been low key worried that the involvement of Neil Druckmann is going to not necessarily cap the maybe cap the creativity of the series, because once you've so made a chief creative of the original work intertwined, naturally, isn't that going to push it towards
Yeah.
being closer to 1-to-1? I hope not. I hope this is just like the nature of a teaser trailer, but
I have a question as someone who hasn't played the original Last of Us or Last of Us 2. Do those games have like good cinematography?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I
Yeah,
wasn't
they're
sure
gorgeous.
because if they're going to do shot for shot, I did not know if they would be adapting what would be totally mid shots in like a film or if
you
they were
you could do so much worse. That
okay,
like,
got it.
Like Last of Us is a big game, but even by big game standards, has been played by nobody. On like, you know what I mean? Like in terms of like what the story's been exposed to, it is not going to shock me if this show is, even if we look at this and go, "Wow, grown." It's like really they just took the video game and shot it, and this ends up becoming like one of the biggest shows next year because it's a great story. Like that, like there's a whole good season in that first game.
There-
Trouble
There's a
when you hit the
thing-
second game.
Well, that's like 4 seasons.
Right.
4 seasons in a movie.
There's a bit I remember from the commentary. I want to say it was Ratatouille, but Brad Bird's talking about like an old rule they had at Pixar, which was that if you're sort of entrusted as the creative lead of a shot at Pixar back in those days, it was always like, make whatever that shot is like something, there has to be something interesting about it, like do something interesting with it. And so there are no like even like utilitarian shots that exist mostly to set up a different shot where something more important happens or set up a more important story beat. You still got a team where people are trying to make every single frame kind of like have some interesting elements in it. I've often thought about that when I play Naughty Dog games, where like they are like every single thing I see, I get the sense of like, well, somebody really smart and creative was like playing around with this little area or this little moment, even if it's pretty humdrum, right? It's like, yep, I'm scavenging through another, it was a bar, but then the apocalypse happened. A place that's completely throwaway in games like this, but like Naughty Dog, generally, like always those spaces feel like they're really immaculately like conceived and lit. And so I think that's kind of going to be a thing the show is up against, which is I think it would be hard making a TV show or film that looks as good as The Last of Us, especially because like to invoke the weirdos in the places rule, Naughty Dog doesn't have to worry about that. Right. They've got a really good mocap process, and then they make games like this.
Well, in some ways, you're like the being in real time versus having to trying to recreate what Naughty Dog does in real time, doing that with real sets, CG. Like, I think there are going to be real moments where the game looks better because of what the game is attempting to, like, what the game is accomplishing with what its intent is, and then that's where you start to worry about if you're spending so much time recreating what was. It's like, well, especially because that new remake that came out that looks gorgeous. Like, of course, that it's going to be hard. It's going to be harder to accomplish that in live action. And so that's why I would hope it's going to have the same beats probably, but that it spends its time lingering in other areas as opposed to just trying to do that 1-to-1.
But there's definitely like specifically them going through that town with the fire exploding behind them. I remember that part too being like you're in the car, right? Like your point of view is from and you can spin the camera around, right? And like it wants to direct you towards certain things. So it's like it felt very then kind of not derivative, but like looking at like the famous Children of Men, like in the car, like camera thing. And so like now we've come back full circle, baby. Now the thing is being referenced again back in its original medium. And I'm like curious how those things will feel played out in like the actual scenes,
really, Children of Men is just going to school on Michael Mann's Collateral. People ascribe too much credit to Cuarón for that. I don't know, but there's other movies that do a great job creating a sense of dynamism and energy in a car, Kato. So let's take a quick.
You can listen to the Collateral episode of Manhunting coming up this week, listener.
Let's take a quick dip in the question bucket. Remember, you can send us all your questions at gamingadvice.com with the subject line questions. So our first question. I have often thought about this game that I've completely forgotten what it was called. And then who wrote this? This is Alberto writes in, and it reminded me of a game I've not thought about in ages. Highway Point team. As you'll soon notice, English is not my mother tongue, so please feel free to correct any grammar misspelling in case you read this on the air. Thanks. Okay, when I was about 13, 14, 1995. A strange game fell in my hands, and after some trial and error, I made it run on my computer. It was a game called Transarctica with really sick cover art. And I'm going to begin dropping some of the sick cover art into, into the chat here.
Yo,
Oh my God.
this looks fucking sick.
Yeah, what we have is like a giant double stack, colossal like scale steam train, like a locomotive that's the size of a passenger ship.
There's a little bit of someone let H.R. Geiger design a train in this in this train too.
There's
Yeah,
also
there's
a
a
lot
bit
of
of
the
that.
number 9 in Grim Fandango when it gets when it goes bad. It adopted a series of novels called Arctic Barrens, but how could I know that? Internet and abandonware sites were a decade in the future for me. It was a copied floppy, of course. Never saw the original game anywhere, but you can find it on some abandonware websites. The premise of the game was that of a fleet management sim, but with giant trains. Set in a world thrown in an ice age, but some hyper weapon of the past that covered the sky in permanent clouds. Think Snowpiercer, but giant steam locomotives roaming the world railroad network. Also, you and your officials have stolen the train you're in. The whole railroad army is chasing you. It's a bit FTL-like now that I think of it. Like, this is the other things, too. Like, I remember some of these screens where, like, your interface is, like, the drawing rooms of, like, a luxury train compartment. And so there's a lot of like, yeah, this stuff that you would see. Lots of cool
Oh my God.
like pixel art characters. Anyway, so you go from city to city, upgrading your train and getting some information that develops the main story of the game. Lignite coal is the main resource. It's your fuel and also the currency used for training, repairing, and upgrading. Because you're gonna repair and upgrade your train after each battle. Battles are, think of a fleet of line ships from the Age of Sail, exchanging cannon fire and assaulting the enemy ships in boarding actions. That, but with moving trains running on parallel railroads. If you destroy the enemy locomotive, you win. You can destroy it with artillery fire, or if your soldiers run all the way over the top of the enemy train and plant charges. If you're victorious, you can claim the surviving enemy wagons, and the surviving soldiers become slaves that help you repair railroads or mine coal. Later on, you get mammoth cavalry and spy wagons to do basic counterintelligence operations or sabotage the roads behind you. Position of the wagons along the convoy greatly affects how efficient they are because they can only fire at what's in front of them. And your enemy has no problem blowing all your precious cargo wagons, your greenhouse, your barracks. You can change the distribution when you're in a city, but you are stuck with your distribution when you are traveling. That game left a mark so great on me. I never got to beat it. It was too difficult for me, but I loved it. I've been doing Transarctica adjacent fan art since then. I wrote some short stories. I modeled some giant trains when I was learning 3D. I even wrote the rules for a small battle card game where your cards are the wagons or the infantry units, etc., and played a few matches with a really patient and understanding friend. I've learned some logic in game engine simulating how I would do a giant fucking steam train battle battle game I like to play. Question, have you or anyone on the team, do you have a game that pushed you into fan art or adjacent themed content? This one is sadly pretty obscure, but that's just me. I love trains. On a sillier note, I love the Manhunting series. There's a Spanish podcast focused on Tom Cruise's career. It's called, of course, Tom Cruising. Thanks for your work and your
Incredible.
words, Alberto.
I'm glad.
So first of all,
Very good.
I remembered this game like vividly. I remember
Huh.
these screenshots. Like I saw reviews of this, and I was like, "That looks cool as hell." And it's one of those games that completely faded from memory. I'd
Sucking.
completely forgotten what this was. So first of all, thank you for reminding me because this looks so freaking
This
cool.
looks so sick. This looks so fucking sick. I'm so mad they don't make them like this anymore.
Yeah,
God damn
Love
it.
this. What is this? A dinosaur?
the little Loch Ness thing,
Little Loch Ness.
little Nessie.
Don't
Yeah,
make fun of my boy.
There's a big dinosaur and he's going
Yeah, it doesn't look scary at all. It's more just like
Oh.
but also, man, it looks cozy aboard that train. Gosh, to lead my little steam train fleet from my executive private car with that appears to be like every spare surface is covered in like old wood or velvet. Love it. Anyway, so anyone been pushed into fan art stuff by a game they got obsessed with?
I think my answer is going to surprise people greatly. I've never read fan fiction. Or gone down a fan rabbit hole, which feels out of character, but is true.
That is surprising. Fan art, fan fiction.
See, nothing like that. I mean, like, you know, like watching Lost was I wasn't watching fan art, but I was, you know, so keyed into like going to like message boards, like keying in with fans, looking at screenshots, you know, participating in like ARGs. Like that's the closest I can get to like, what is the question here is sort of implying like, when does something sort of get under your skin to the point that you're going beyond the basic levels of I'm a fan of this thing and then engaging with it to I would like to make it part of my identity. And so like Final Fantasy VII as a kid, like that was that. Like I never wanted to leave that world. Like why did I grind my characters to level 99? Because I just something to do during the summer, and I just wanted to.
It's funny to me that you bring up ARGs there, because I was kind of the opposite as far as like engagement in the property itself. When I really got into ARGs, I was like, I really love.
You just wanted the ARGs.
I really loved the form of an ARG. It felt really cool to be part of like that community figuring out puzzles. And I did the like Tron one. I did the one for like the Dark Knight. I did the one for what else happened around that time. There were a couple. Oh, the one for Battle. That was the era. I never played BioShock 2, but I religiously followed the ARG for BioShock 2 and have a vinyl record.
This was the era of the ARG.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they still obviously exist to some degree, but like there was a stretch of years following the Isle of Bees, right? That's the Halo 2 one. That like really they just were everywhere, like and like were a huge part of the promotion of all sorts of
followed off of
stuff.
the one they did one for AI. Remember that?
Yes,
that was kind of the big one that set off that rush of ones. Isle of Bees comes like right almost directly after, and I think from the same people, from the same like marketing people.
I think a lot of them originally from that same team of creatives.
What was it? 42 Studios, I think was the name of them.
That sounds right. I remember picking up the closest I got to was I picked up a payphone once to listen to something. Like that's because I think it was at Comic-Con one year when one of those was going down.
I was living in New York and a carload of me and my friends drove. Living in Baltimore and a carload of me and my friends drove up to both. We drove up to Philly and then also to New York for the Dark Knight one because they were like
that rules.
That was the closest thing that wasn't gonna fucking happen in Baltimore. like that's not where the kind of city that people.
Well, that was the problem.
Choose.
That's why you but that made the fun of it where you could still participate on.
It was
like
a little road
Reddit
trip.
and other places, right? Yeah, or just like you become part of the puzzle community as opposed to necessarily doing the physical interacting part, which was the neat part of a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. 42 Entertainment was the name. There we go.
Rob, do you remember what was the EA game that is like a lot of the originaters of this? Remember the EA game that we would call Majestic. Yes. Like ARGs essentially, I think would owe a lot to a lot of the experimentation of Majestic. I never played Majestic, but have read about it breathlessly. But Majestic was what? That was a EA published adventure game that had real life like character role players, right? Like you were calling people, they were leaving messages on your voicemail. There was a fax machine interaction. There's a lot more to it that I can't remember off the top of my head.
Humanity wasn't ready for it.
It was not. It was not ready for Majestic. It would be so ready now, but
Well, especially like imagine, yeah, that's the thing. Like imagine how this would change in like what you do with smartphones and stuff.
Right.
Like I mean, this was literally like what the Oxenfree Night School did when they made their Mr. Robot like mobile game, which was entirely like, oh yeah, your phone's messages now are getting stuff from Darlene in Mr. Robot, and we need you to social engineer this like security officer at Steel Mountain and shit. Which
listen
is
to
all
this.
cool.
As Majestic was a science fiction thriller based on Majestic 12 Shadow Government Conspiracy Theory. As an ARG, the game was played by phone, email, wait for it, AOL Instant Messenger, BlackBerry messages, fax, and by visiting special websites. Gameplay frequently involved the player receiving clues they would use to solve puzzles and unravel a story. All the messages were automated with limited dialogue options, but AIM, AOL Instant Messenger, provided some interactive conversations, an option to warn unsuspecting members in the same house. As an option to warn unsuspecting members in the same house, you could enable a warning at the beginning of each phone call and a small message at the top of all faxes. When the option was enabled, each phone call would begin with a woman saying, "This is a phone call from the video game Majestic," before the regular pre-recorded message. Some of the clues were videos featuring the game's cast. One of the more widely recognized actors was Joe
I thought it would say the
Pantoliano?
video game Majestic. At this point,
Joe
we're past the
Pantoliano?
video game.
Yes.
Joey
The pilot
Pants?
episode was free to... The pilot episode was free to try, but 4 remaining episodes required players to join EA.com's Platinum service, which cost $9.95 at the time, which is a lot for July
We weren't
2001.
Look, the world wasn't ready for this.
It was not. Also, I need to point out the game took place in real time. I forgot about this element of
Holy
it.
shit!
The game took place in real time. If a character said they would contact their player the next time at a particular time, they would. The game was meant to be played casually. In order to keep a player from going through the game's entire content one day, progress was limited each day. Once a player had accomplished the goals for the day, they were placed on standby, in which no progress could be made until they were taken off standby. Wild.
How much do I have to pay for people to try to kill me in real life?
You can just go to Halloween Horror Nights. This was like right at the beginning, 2001.
Right. So this is that era. Like
That's
there's something in
exactly
the
that
air.
era. Like, yeah, that's when the Beast happens, right? Isn't that movie from 2001? Fucking AI, artificial intelligence.
I think so.
Yes. Yeah, that came out. So the marketing happened the year before, even. But yeah, it was in the air. Like,
Wait, the Haley Joel Osment thing?
yes, that is one of the like originators of the form. Like, of yes, that the marketing for that is like what a lot of people point to as like the first big successful like ARG. Like, because ARGs kind of out of form existed in other ways that were like more centralized and more just about cool puzzles that people were making that were being solved in community. And then this was like the first time that was made to marketing and really like pushed to like, you're really a part of this universe, this world. And then, I Love Bees happened after that. Cause like the Beast was Microsoft. Microsoft developed the one for AI, artificial intelligence, which then they go to do I Love Bees, which is like, a huge classic in like the ARG timeline. Shit.
We need to steer my turn to let us rewatch AI, a movie I did not understand at the time. I was very young. I did not respond to it well, but I feel like it's a movie that I would probably like a lot more upon rewatching. Rob, do you agree with that assessment?
I also it didn't. So there was like the.
I got to the ending with the aliens, and I was just like, I don't know what's going on in this movie. I was like, oh, sorry, Spielberg, I'm out.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there was also just a weird kind of like, it was kind of peak Haley Joel Osment, and I was like, I don't need this much of this kid in my life.
I heard that movie is like ripe for reappraisal. I will direct my turn to AI at some point. I need a reason to rewatch.
The wheel will continue to turn and spin us through.
Speaking of, as long as I got brought up, if you are a Waypoint Plus newsletter subscriber, you have a link to a poll where you can When's that? When am I going to have? Well, we're not going to record it until next
Next
week.
week.
So
Yeah.
let's say you have till the end of Wednesday to submit to pick from either any of the submissions we have made. I'm not even going to say them here because you need to be a Waypoint Plus subscriber. Click that poll, find out for yourself what you'd like us to watch next. Obviously, that
And if,
podcast will eventually go to everyone, but the poll we're kind of trying to limit to people who are in the sub community.
and if you're subscribed to Waypoint Plus, but for some reason aren't getting the newsletters, you can send an email to, I believe it's waypointplus@vice.com to get you. We can get you or just
It's faster to DM. It's
DM.
faster to DM me. You like send me a message because then I could just send a message to someone in Slack and they can fix it 30 seconds later. Because actually, there are more people in the woodwork that if you unsubbed either because Vice spammed you with a newsletter you didn't want or you unsubbed and want to get back in, send me a message and I can flip that back on for you in the back end.
Question here from Jay, aka Vogon Poetry Lover. Dear Waypointers, as a little kid, I enjoyed video games, but for years they were sort of a backup entertainment option. It wasn't until Final Fantasy IX that I got completely hooked on it that video games went from a thing to do when it was raining outside and couldn't ride my bike or play basketball to the only thing I wanted to do when I got home from school and burn all of my free time on. So my question for the crew is, what video game ruined your lives?
oh,
My answer here would be, like, I have always been prone to, and still am, like a little bit of prone to like a bit of fixation on games to the point where I'll just like play stuff past the point where it is fun because like there's some challenge I need to complete or I just like see what I need to do, but I'm having trouble putting all the pieces together. And so that will just happen randomly where I will like sort of marathon a game well past the point where I'm still digging it. This happened a few years ago with a game called Kingdom, which is a really cool, beautiful like little like 2D strategy game. But also it consumed an entire weekend of mine and I really did not want it to. But the end game was just annoying enough and fussy enough that I always felt like I can just try that again and like get it right this time.
12 hours later.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's stuff that can absolutely happen. But in terms of like life trajectory altering, that's a good question.
I don't have once like I mean like as I alluded to like in the episode of Final Fantasy, like JRPGs had a tendency to, especially in the summer, like engulf my life where I would just stay up until I put the volume low enough, stay up till 4 a.m, and my parents would wonder, why is he sleeping till noon? Well, because I was playing Breath of Fire till 4:30 a.m, unbeknownst to them. But the story that actually comes to mind is about my mom, who not a video game person whatsoever, except for a single video game, Tetris. And when I was younger, when we got a Game Boy, that she was was frequently taking the Game Boy from us to go play herself, and eventually asked me to hide the Game Boy from her when I would go to school. So they just put it somewhere in your room that I wouldn't be able to find, because like once or twice she found that like would get us off to school. This is like, elementary school era. And she would come back. She's like, well, I'll just play 1 or 2 rounds of Tetris. And it would be like 1 p.m. Like that kind of like time vanished for her. And it stopped being funny. And she was like, I really should not be playing that. Like she just loses all sense of time and perspective. So eventually started hiding that from her. And also, like, we didn't have a ton of money at the time, and like batteries are expensive, and there are no rechargeables. So like you rip through a Game Boy's like 4 AA's or whatever it was, like that was a lot. We wouldn't have a Costco subscription. I don't think Costco existed back then, so you couldn't like go buy 30, 40 batteries. And to piggyback on that, when we got a Super Scope for the Super Nintendo, and one of the games on there was Blastress, which was a version of Tetris instead you were shooting the little pieces to rotate them around. And there were some other mechanics about shooting that I forget, that are lost to time. But what that thing took like big, like D battery, like the big circle ones, like the ones that are like really heavy in your hand. And those were really expensive. And the Super Scope, much like a lot of devices at that time, did not have like hey, you don't seem to be using me. I'm going to turn off. Like, we're cool. Like, it's just you left it on and it just kept draining power. And I came home from school one day to be chewed out because the Super Scope was dead and the batteries were chewed through. And I asked my mom, I was like, well, did you play Blastress today? She said, well, I played it once. Did you turn the Super Scope off? Like, oh, I didn't know you had to turn it off. I said, Mom, you did that. You, and she was like, oh, okay. You're going to have to hide that too. I was like, okay, I'm going to hide
the Super Scope.
Incredible.
Oh my God.
It was by design. It was the size of a bazooka.
Well, I would put it underneath we had a crawl space and no one liked going down there. So I just would kind of shove it into the side of the crawl space. So I didn't have to go into the crawl space to retrieve it. I would just move the opening away, put my hand in, hope there wasn't a spider and bring it back out.
I guess Civ 2, probably, if I think about like young enough exposure where it's like, things are happening to my brain that I was not prepared for. Civilization 2 was probably that, where I was like, Civ 1 had been cool. A friend of mine was convinced, like, just try Civilization, you'll dig it. And they were right. I was like, Civilization's good. And this is right before Civ 2 came out. And Civ 2, I was like, this is all I want to do with my life forever.
God, manuals were so big. I remember buying Civ 2, and like that thing had a novel like in the box.
And that one escalated rapidly to like sneaking into the office to play it late at night.
Oh, your dad's computer was like the computer?
Yeah. And that required like a lot of memorizing which floorboards creaked, etc. Stopping the light under the door, all that good stuff. And then, a lot of playing hooky to get more time with that game. Can't be bothered with school. I've got a whole education happening right here, folks.
I was having trouble coming up with one because I feel like I've been, I got brought up on like an Atari. We had it a lot, but like it truly didn't. I think it truly didn't become that thing as was described in the question until I think Pokemon was the one where I was like, now I'm hiding the Game Boy under the covers with the fucking flashlight because the Game Boy Color I had obviously was. I had the first run Game Boy Color, the purple translucent one that didn't have a backlight. But that game ruined me. A small little 9-year-old getting completely sucked in. I mean, that happened to a lot of people, right? With that game. If you were at the right age, it just fucked you up.
I think that I'm in an odd position here, and I think that actually, as time slowly marches forward, there's going to be a lot of people in a similar position where I don't remember what the tipping point was. It kind of just always was. Yeah,
you existed when video games were just normalized.
Part of my life. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, around like there weren't like the emergence of video games as a medium popularized happened to all of us when we were kids, and then you had the benefit of. It just being there,
right? And like, if I ask my if in 10 or 15 years I ask my half brother, what was that for you? He wouldn't be able to answer. He wouldn't be able to answer because like he was 4 years old and watching Roblox videos on YouTube, right?
Right. So like my kid's in a Minecraft class right now because like games have normalized even further past what they were for you, which is that now actually like right alongside cheerleading, you can also go to a Minecraft class. Yeah. Where then your kid comes home and is like, I know how to blow shit up with TNT. It's like, congratulations.
Yeah. So I don't have a, I'm trying to think if there's like a game that I really got into at any point in my life. But again, I'm not the kind of person who like dumps hundreds of hours into a thing. I instead go shallow and wide, not small and deep.
I think we'll leave it there. Call it a wrap on today's episode. If you want more from Waypoint, you can follow us on Twitter at Waypoint, Facebook and YouTube, Waypoint Vice. You can follow me on Twitter at Rob Zachney. Ricardo, where can people find you?
At A_Kato_appears.
Patrick.
At Patrick Klepek.
Ren.
You can find me on Twitter at Ren or Raven.
You also go check out what we published on waypoint.vice.com. Be sure to read Ren's piece on Gundam Evolution. We talked about that game a while ago on the pod, but it sounds like it's coming together quite beautifully. And you should check out Ren's write-up on it. And thanks to Waypoint Plus, I think you're going to get a chance to see me and Natalie coming to grips with System Shock 1 and figuring out what waypoints you all need to be navigating to get a good sample size of that game and what's
Am I just
going
downloading
on
that
there.
in Steam? I'm gonna start playing that too.
Yeah.
What is and that's fine. I don't need to do anything funky like with the
No.
version?
The night dive, I think, like the System Shock Enhanced, it's all plug and play. You shouldn't have to do anything. So we're gonna be playing that, and be sure to check out our Fortnite Friday from last week, in which we decisively proved that I'm bringing the squad down because
Oh no!
It was an accident.
Patrick, I got disconnected as we entered the end game, and they won.
Wow.
Look, I mean,
Yeah.
it was late enough that
No, I
person
appreciate
down-
Kato. It means a lot to me that you're doing this.
I swear
But like,
we would have won faster if you were there. That's the type of situation.
No, Rob, truly, I cannot fathom a situation in which you being there made it worse.
Nah, not at all. Not at all. We played a good game, that entire game, and you got dropped at a very unfortunate time.
that's true.
But
That
you were
is
not.
true. We did get very lucky that the circle kept narrowing on the floating battleship that we were using as our fortress. There in the end game.
It was great.
Coming up soon, we're also going to be, we alluded to it earlier, this week on Manhunting, we're going to be doing Collateral, and Austin Walker will swing by and chat about that movie with us as well. And let's see, are we doing sports this week, Pat? Probably not.
I think we need to. We're gonna give it a week. I mean, we'll see if something inspires us. But I think my guess is the cadence of it is going to be every other week. That would be my thought.
Yeah.
Like to give a little more breathing room to.
Agreed.
And also, they were so bad, Rob. I don't want to
It's really is. It's a hard thing. You and I need to talk because I didn't see it, but I was checking the stat line. It did not look inspiring. As MK put it this morning, as we were taking the dog out, because I was furious. I stayed up till like 11:30 watching Sunday Night Football, and it was just a terrible game.
Awful.
And I was just at like we're standing by the elevator, and I was like, I'm so pissed that like I watched like 3 or 4 hours of football yesterday, and all it was shit. And she was like, well, now football's truly begun. Football season has truly begun. You're mad that you watched football.
I spent all year waiting for the season to begin, and I want it to be done at the end of September. That's the true football experience.
Yep. Anyway, so keep an eye out for Collateral. Keep an eye out for that newsletter with the poll, and what we'll be doing next on My Turn. We'll be heading back to Sportsland soon. If that sounds good, if you just want more Waypoint, you go to waypointplus.com and subscribe. Not only do you get access to our premium feed, but you're helping support Waypoint and everything else we do here. If you want some sweet merch, go to waypointgeneralstore.com and buy things like posters or like the glassware that I've seen Ren having a refreshing drink of water from throughout the show. Ren, does it hit different when it's out of the Adventure pint glass?
It's just so crisp. I take a big sippy and I go, ooh, wow, this feels blessed by a wizard.
See? That could be you. WaypointGeneralStore.com. Our theme music is by Bowen. The track is Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. Learn more at waypoint.zone/BOEN. For now, we're calling time on this Tuesday. We'll talk to you again on Friday. Until then, fuck capitalism. Go home.